they have strategic decisions as well, where a small system that's cheating or misrepresenting in their FDD, maybe they've only made a handful of sales and maybe only one has gone bad, right, or rotten or something. And does it make sense to use FTC resources to police that? Maybe not, right? Maybe not as a taxpayer, we don't want to see that. But from a franchisor or franchise industry rather perspective, yes, we probably want to see that because it helps make our industry better and it catches those misrepresentations and some would say cheaters early, right? And encourages them to stay in the line, to play by the same rules everyone else is.
Welcome to the Franchise Hot Seat Podcast, where we talk about all things franchising. Now, here's your host, Dr. John P. Hayes.
Hi, it's John Hayes with another episode of the Franchise Hot Seat, where we talk about sometimes controversial issues in franchising, not always, but hot topics, current topics, and topics that are of interest to you. And my guest today is a longtime friend, a member of the Titus Center Advisory Board as well, and that is Skylar Rocky Reidel. And he is the founder of the Reidel law firm. And one of the things I like about you, Rocky, is that you answer your own phone and you answer your email. There's no robot phone menus at the Reidel law firm, and that's great.
Not at all.
And also, people who are often concerned about, well, lawyers are expensive, and I don't listen. You're going to make an investment of your life savings, $400,000, $500,000, $1 million, $150,000. You can afford a couple $1,000s to get legal guidance, please. Otherwise, don't do this. People don't always understand that your neighbor who's a great divorce attorney doesn't know about franchise law. Even the business lawyer across the street might not know about franchise law. And it could be different depending on which state you're in and what it is that you're trying to do. So you help franchisees understand the terms and the obligations of a franchise agreement. I like that you do it in plain English to review an overview, but you give them the details of the legal language that they might need to look at. You interpret it for them. You help them to understand it. And it's always a flat fee as well, so they don't have to worry about the nickels and dimes and time ticking away and how much that's going to cost them. So welcome to the Franchise Hot Seat and to this opportunity that I can spend some time talking to you about some controversial issues that are going on right now. You're one of the top thought leaders in franchising across the world. People can meet you on LinkedIn. That's what they should do. Go search you out there and follow your information. And one of the first so welcome, Rocky, to...
Thank you. Great to see you, John.
Yeah.
Good to be here.
Yeah. So one of the first things I want to get to right away is the SBA, issues with the SBA.
Yeah.
So the SBA, you say, isn't a mere government agency for franchising. It's the lifeblood. Nearly 70% of new franchise acquisitions rely on SBA 7A or 504 loans.
Yeah.
So when the SBA goes dark, franchising can go dark. People need to know with the shutdown that we're currently in, you're already getting calls from people about what's going to happen to my SBA loan. You have pointed out that if you're navigating a franchise transaction right now, move aggressively to protect your position, although now it's probably too late because we're in the midst of this shutdown. What's going to happen? What do you hear?
So, well, hopefully the government will reopen, right? And the SBA will start processing those again. There was a bit of a time lag, right, between the shutdown and when the SBA loans kind of stopped and stopped being processed by the SBA. And that's because the SBA loans work through banks, right? So the banks will handle their paperwork and then pass it up to the SBA for their approval, right? And the SBA really, they're guaranteeing the bank. So now we were going, I guess on 2 weeks or something of the shutdown. Now the banks have finished their paperwork and the queue at the SBA is not moving. So it's it's stalling out deals. Some franchisors I've seen are working towards alternative programs, right? And working with some of the franchise lending companies that are out there. So some systems are moving aggressively to be able to find solutions. Smaller systems just don't have that strength. They don't have that resource available to them. And it's going to be a struggle for them to finish and consummate these franchise sales, unfortunately. So if you're a franchisee, you definitely need to start exploring options. Maybe that's temporary work around with your bank, right? I don't know what type of options your bank might be willing to work with you on, but it's in the bank's best interest to make sure that they're on the deal, right? Because they get a benefit of that, and they get the SBA backing once it's back running. So I don't know of any specific programs at this time. No one's reached out to me with them, but I know my clients are struggling with it and are actively looking for programs and people to work with.
Okay. Hopefully that's going to sort out. I did speak with FranFund at the end of last week. FranFund does, a lot of these taxes, helping people. Yeah. They said they were able to get ahead of it and get from the SBA loan numbers for approval. And so their clients were in good shape for at least a couple of weeks or so, but it may be catching up with them as well. All right. So hopefully we need SBA. People don't always understand SBA does not give you money. The banks give you the money. The SBA guarantees the loan that the bank makes. Yeah. Okay.
And it's to give a leg up to small businesses, right? It's designed to help people who are taxpayers, who are good citizens, to be able to take that additional risk, right? Where banks may not be willing to step in. The government's willing to say, hey, we trust that we can help these citizens and these small business owners, and we'll lower that risk a little bit for the banks. So that's what the program is for. It's definitely not a welfare program.
All right, moving on to another controversial topic, a hot topic for sure. You wrote on LinkedIn in one of your posts, the truth is, while franchising offers incredible advantages like established brand recognition and proven systems, it's not the business in a box solution many people believe it to be. The most successful franchisees enter with their eyes wide open about the potential challenges ahead in franchising. This has to be reinforced all the time. People get this idea because the franchisor said it's turnkey, which means to me, give me a key, I'll buy it, put it in the lock, turn it, and voila, I'm a multimillionaire.
Money spits out, right?
Yeah. Okay. So what's this about? What prompted you to remind people that it's not the business in a box solution that they may have been led to believe?
So I also deal with franchise exits. That's the less fun area of the industry, right? And there's just been a number of calls recently that I noticed ticking up where the franchisee was upset or concerned about their perceived promises that the franchisor gave them, whether that site selection. I had a call just yesterday about that. They felt the franchisor was not active enough in site selection, or they felt another one was about ad funds, right, and advertising, and the franchisor is not doing enough to advertise. And if you look at your franchise agreements carefully, these are not usually legal obligations of the franchisor. They don't have a legal obligation to find you a site, usually. They don't have an obligation to prove the site works for you, right, and make sure it's adequate. They don't have a duty to run a system ad fund or do national advertising. Those are totally at their discretion, right? So it is permissive of the franchisor. And although they say they run it, and they may do it, at any time they can turn it off. And at any time they can modify it, or they can raise or lower fees. So it's just a piece of the education for folks jumping into franchising and considering joining a franchise system to understand those obligations are usually at the franchisor's discretion. It's permissive. And although they run it and they're doing it now, it doesn't mean it's evergreen and everlasting. And things change. And likely as a franchisee, you will not have recourse when those programs or benefits change. Mm-hmm. So that's why I wrote it. Yeah.
Okay, 2 items of the FDD, the franchise disclosure document, which we encourage people to read. It's written in plain English. Even though I don't understand it all the time myself. So I've got to come to you and say, what does this mean? Because it's just some things are confusing, but for the most part, it's written in plain English. I think it's items 9 and 11, maybe, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
9 is the obligations of the franchisee, which will be 6 feet long, all of your obligations. Item 11, the obligations of the franchisor. You can hardly read it. It's
Short.
not much there. They don't have any obligations. So whatever this turnkey is, they're not turning, and they might not even be providing the key. Business in a box? No, not according to the franchisor's FDD, because they're not participating at levels that you might think that they are. Doesn't mean they won't, as you pointed out. But you also point out here that entrepreneurs are drawn to franchising because they want to be their own boss. Sure. So many of my students, the Gen Zs, want that, but they feel frustrated when they discover the franchisor controls everything from product offerings to promotional campaigns. All right. Yeah. I don't know if you're an entrepreneur, and on a scale of 1 to 10, the Wharton Business School actually gave that to me in 1979. They said, think of entrepreneurship as a scale. 1, you hardly get out of bed. 10, you never go to bed. You're go, go, go all the time. You're an off-the-chart entrepreneurial type. If you're maybe 6 or above, don't become a franchisee. You're not going to be in control of things. So when people say we're looking for some good entrepreneurs to be part, I don't think you are. I don't think that the entrepreneurs shouldn't be looking for you because you control far more. What about that?
Absolutely. No, you're absolutely correct. And it's one of the things that we talk about in our reviews with franchisees or prospective franchisees. If you are an individual who likes to tinker, who likes to take things apart, put it back together, to customize, franchising probably is not a fit for you because you don't have the freedom to customize. You don't have the freedom to tinker. You follow the system. And it's one of the reasons why I'm not a franchisee, really. I mean, I love the franchise industry, but I'm very independent minded. I'm very much a tinkerer. I love to customize everything. So it's, I would be a very, very poor, bad fit franchisee.
Yeah. Well, it's good that you know that. The franchise system is not for tinkering. And,
exactly.
You've got to accept that. Now, people argue with me about that all the time and that it's wrong. It shouldn't be that way. Franchisors should be open-minded. Wait a minute. This franchisor figured out a system for their business. They know what to do, when to do it, how much of it to do, how much it should cost, and when to do it all over again. Yeah. That's what you're paying for. So when they tell you that you've got to do X, you've got to do X. Whether you think Y would be better or Z would be better. It's not your choice. And here's the other thing. What percentage, Rocky, of small businesses that are not following a franchise system, new independent businesses that open every year in America, what percentage, and in the United Kingdom and around the world, the statistics are almost the same everywhere I've taught. What percentage of those businesses won't even last a year?
Yeah, it's 70% or higher usually.
Yeah, it's tremendous. Half of them at least won't last a year. Maybe 70, 80% won't last 5 years. Why? Oh, people say they ran out of money. They did not run out of money. Fred DeLuca started with $1,000, built Subway, the biggest chain of all, at least for a period of time. $1,000. You couldn't do it with $400,000. You couldn't build one unit with $400,000. It's not because you ran out of money. It's because you didn't follow the franchisor system. If the franchisor had a good system, which is another topic that we can talk about.
Another part of the equation. No, you're absolutely right. It's a give and take. It's an industry that has tremendous benefits, but also you got to play within the lines, right? It's not a free-form relationship. It's not an industry where everything goes. It's very much formalized and settled. Yeah. Part of that's because it's regulated heavily. Also, another part of it's just the nature of what franchises are selling and how they structure their system and how it works. Yeah. When it works fantastic. Yeah. When there's some struggles on either side of the equation, it can get messy.
Yeah. And sometimes it's because someone did not follow the system. Sometimes. Yeah. It's not all the time. Now, I'm not taking the franchisor side all the time on that. There are bad franchisors. There are bad systems.
100%. I represent franchisors as well, and we've had bad franchisees who, just will not do what we know works.
Well, this is part of my struggle with, we have a new major at the university, entrepreneurship and franchising, kind of an oxymoron. Is it helpful to know both entrepreneurship and franchising? Yes, it absolutely is. But you're probably not going to live in both of those arenas simultaneously.
Sure. Different skill sets. Some of them overlap, but some of them are mutually exclusive, definitely.
Now, when you become a multi-unit, multi-brand franchisee, yes, you need to be entrepreneurial at that point. But when you're working in one unit, trying to get that built and successful, you better be listening to that franchisor who better have a great system. That's not always the case. Now, you also gave some advice. Before signing any franchise agreement, honestly assess whether you can thrive within someone else's system while building your own local reputation for excellence. Franchisees who succeed long-term are those who embrace the structure rather than fight it. Come on, there it is. Simple as that. And yet, we've got people arguing about this all the time, that it's the franchisor's fault this didn't work. Well, you might have been the wrong person. Not everyone should become a franchisee.
Yes, absolutely. That's a big reason why I exist, is educating franchisees about that. And most of the time, by the time they get to me, they've already recognized that. So it's confirmation, right? It's making sure their concerns are assuaged and their questions are answered. But sometimes I get folks who come to me who have the idea, we want to take the system and we're going to build a better sandwich, right? Or whatever. We're going to tinker with it. We've got a new plan. We're going to start a new program to bring new demographics in. And I got to tell them that's probably not going to fly. Almost certainly the franchise agreement says it's not. You will not be allowed to do that. Franchisor may tell you they might let you, but frankly, the franchise agreement rules, right?
Exactly. You also said franchising can be incredibly rewarding. Well, we know multi-millionaires. I know some billionaires in franchising, but only if you understand what you're truly buying into. And that is so basic. This is where you start. You don't start at real estate, finding the perfect location and signing up because you want to buy a business in a box that may or may not be a business in a box, and you started with real estate. First of all, you don't even know if you should be a franchisee. Get that figured out. Secondly, you don't know that this is the right franchisor with a system that's going to work for you. Get that straightened out before you do these other things. So great advice on that.
One last comment.
Go ahead,
John. One last comment I will say is also different franchisees or prospective franchisees have different risk profiles. And we talk about that in our reviews too. Some franchisees like a newer system. They like having that little bit more risk because there's maybe greater reward and they have a little bit more flexibility. So there can be a good fit for you in franchising, but you got to recognize your risk. You got to recognize your skill sets and what you like. So.
Every student of mine, anybody who comes to me to want some advice about, I do not sell franchises. That's not what I have ever done. I'm not a franchise sales guy. Wish I had been. I would have been retired by now, but that's beside the point. I give every student at Palm Beach Atlantic University who comes into my franchise class in the beginning of the semester, they take a DISC profile.
Oh, yeah.
10 minutes. When I see that DISC profile and they tell me they want to be a franchisee, but they are a high C and then a high S, no D, and a little bit of I, they're probably never going to be a franchisee. They could be a really good employee of a franchisor or a multi-unit franchisee and do extremely well. Probably not going to be a franchisee with that kind of a profile. Now, they tell me, well, I want to be in senior care. All right, that's more of the kind of profile I'd expect to see, but I need to see some ID. This is so simple. And people, even franchisors, shame on them. Shame on franchisors who don't give some kind of a profile to a prospect to make sure we know what the profile is, or you should know as a franchisor, what the profile is of your top 50 producing franchisees. If this new person doesn't match that profile, what are you doing selling them a franchise? You're just taking their money.
Yeah.
It's a wrong, we learned that at Homevestors. You can't go out and buy an ugly house, just anybody. You might be fantastic in real estate, know everything about it, but you can't go out and buy an ugly house unless you've got a lot of D in your personality. And our top people who are buying 100 or more houses a year, they had D in their personality.
Oh, yeah.
The
Gotta be a
S's
go-getter.
and the C's weren't able to do that. So you got to find out not only what franchising is all about, you got to find out if it's a fit for you. And it's not for most people. This is the franchisors don't like me saying that because they want to sell franchises.
Yeah.
Well, we
It's
want them to
just
sell
the
franchises.
reality.
We just want them to sell
100%.
franchises where people are going to succeed. All right. Let's talk about the franchise disclosure document. Now, that's a controversial topic for sure. You say here, just last month, I caught yet another franchisor with blatantly false information buried in their FDD, the fifth one this year alone.
Yeah. Yeah, this year.
You might be on to number 6 already. The FDD has become largely a document of faith. What the heck? No, that's not the way it's supposed to work. Franchisors are supposed to tell the truth in this franchise disclosure document written in plain English so that we can understand it. Of course, IFA says 70% of franchisees don't read the FDD.
Probably
You
not.
probably realize that as well.
Yeah, probably not. No, I think that number is probably accurate. But I will say that I don't think there is there are very good franchisors out there, and there's very good systems. I don't see a movement at large for systems trying to cheat on their FDD, but I do see a lot of startup, smaller systems take templates online or go to an attorney who doesn't know franchising and muck up their FDD and misrepresent things in their FDD. I mean, last year, the FTC action was about, the only action they took last year, coffee company, was because they claimed the units could open within 90 days. And opening a restaurant or a cafe doesn't really happen that way in most places. You have permitting that takes 90 days even. They had an action and they had a settlement with FTC because of that. So, I mean, it's things that you would think are rather innocuous lead to major misrepresentation allegations and potentially major fines. So, yeah, I've caught stuff like those timelines in there. I had one franchisor. I think the reason I wrote this was this franchisor very, very clearly it was a template, and it was an old template. It was not as old as a UFOC template, but almost almost that old, right? And they had claimed in their FDD that they were a member of the IFA. Very clearly, they were a member. They were part of their programs. I know the IFA, and you know the IFA too. I called them up and asked, hey, General Counsel, IFA, is this person part of your membership? I don't think they are, looking at their documents. And of course, they were not. So it's just stuff like that. And once you read a few hundred of these, you catch them very easily.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty adept at finding them. But I don't know. It's just a shame. I wish the startup franchisors, a lot of them are undercapitalized. They try to cut corners, and it leads to misrepresentations and bad FDDs.
Yeah. I'm not surprised by this at all. I'm a lot older than you are and been in franchising since 1979, so I'm like ancient compared to you. So I'm not surprised about this. People who become franchisors, they are entrepreneurial, and they are going to cut corners, and they are going to say things. Well, we did go to an IFA meeting, so we'll say we're an IFA member. No, you're not an IFA member, or whatever else it is. What you put in the FDD is supposed to be honest. Yeah. Franchising is a relationship built on trust, not on faith. Not on faith, even though I am a man of faith, and I believe we need to be faith-driven. But that's a separate question here. The FDD should not be a document of faith. The FDD is expected to be a document of truth. But you're pointing out that it not always is the case.
Some of it we have to take, right, because we can't prove it. So the other aspect of that, besides the issues that I find that are obvious, is that there is some gap between the ability of a franchisee to do full due diligence. I know the answer in a lot of the franchisor side of the industry is do due diligence, do better due diligence. Yeah. We can do up to a certain amount, but I can't do a background check, for example, on a CEO of a franchisor system. Yeah. Right? I need their social security number and I need their permission. I can do a public record search, and we do in our reviews, but sometimes that has its own gaps. It's not a background check.
Yeah.
And the franchisor is doing background checks, so they should be on their franchisees, right, to get in the door, and that's fine. But I pointed out in some of our conversation on LinkedIn is that there is some gap that the franchisee has in being able to verify some of the data in the FDD, and that's why it's regulated, right? It's regulated because we recognize as an industry there is a bit of a knowledge gap. That knowledge gap is closing, which is great, I think, for franchisees. But to pretend it doesn't exist, I think, is a bit just disingenuous. And that was another big part of the reason for that comment and my position on the FDD. I don't think we need to add a bunch of stuff to the FDD necessarily or make it even harder for people to franchise their business and their model. But we need to recognize there is knowledge gaps. There is knowledge disparity in the industry, and, not pretend that it's not there and stick our head in the sand or blame franchisees for not doing due diligence. I don't know. So I don't know what the solution would be on that, but recognizing it, I think, is the first step.
And I don't like this where you say, can franchisees truly verify the information they're betting their life savings on in the FDD? And the uncomfortable answer, they can't.
Yeah.
As you pointed out, you can't run a background check on the president of the company because you're not going to get his Social Security. He's probably not. Some might agree to that. They don't have anything to hide. Then you go on to say, I don't believe this necessarily demands more regulations or expanding FDD requirements, but we should acknowledge that our current system forces emotional investment decisions. I don't like that either. I love faith, but I don't want to make my totally make my FDD decisions based on my faith. I shouldn't have to do that. That's not what faith is about. And then an emotional investment? No, I want it to be a calculated risk that I'm going to do with my investment. So
Ideal, definitely.
Forces emotional investment decisions while masquerading as factual due diligence. Okay. I want to talk about that because there are folks like our friend Keith Miller, who I admire greatly, very supportive of our franchise education program, mentoring a group of my students right now on a topic. Subway franchisee for many, many, many years, he and his wife. Not a lawyer, which always amazes me. This guy knows so much, but he's not a lawyer. And he wants more regulation. And I take your position. I don't know that we necessarily need it, but this says to me, I think Keith might be right.
To some extent, he has very great points, very valid points, and he and I agree on quite a bit. We also disagree on some, right? And quite a bit, I would say.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's so, I don't think it's ideal. We don't encourage emotional decisions, but it's just a fact of human nature. And I don't think ignoring that or pretending it doesn't exist helps us and helps our industry. And we should just recognize that our franchise sales systems, they sell dreams, right? They sell a vision, right? We sell something that people hope, that want to cling on to. And if the numbers back it, then great things can happen, right? But sometimes the numbers don't back it, or sometimes the model isn't all that they say it is. And that's when we have trouble, when those dreams shatter, right? And that hope is snatched away. So it's I don't have a solution. I don't have a perfect answer. I don't think regulation is the answer, but the current industry model of pretending that it's rational decision making, pretending that franchisees just don't do enough due diligence, I don't think that's right either. I think we're moving towards a better model. And I think we're moving towards closing those knowledge gaps. I mean, look how much data is out there nowadays you can buy online. One day, we're going to be able to buy all the data on anybody at some point. Maybe that will close the gap. All right. So,
there's also this point that we can't independently verify much of the information in the FDD. And the FDD is backed by a regulatory system that rarely enforces violations. Why?
Yeah.
What's that about? Why not? I can see Keith all over that.
Yeah, I mean, the FTC is understaffed, especially right now, right? They're not getting paid at all. And they don't have a huge team. And also, they have strategic decisions as well, where a small system that's cheating or misrepresenting in their FDD, maybe they've only made a handful of sales and maybe only one has gone bad, right? Or rotten or something. And does it make sense to use FTC resources to police that? Maybe not, right? Maybe not as a taxpayer. We don't want to see that. But from a franchisor or franchise industry rather perspective, yes, we probably want to see that because it helps make our industry better and it catches those misrepresentations and some would say cheaters early, right? And encourages them to stay in the lines and play by the same rules everyone else is. So I don't fault the FTC or even the state regulators. I know they're in a bind and they have a lot of work to do with limited staffs and budgets, but there is a conception, I think, in the general public that these regulatory bodies, because there's rules and regulations and regulators, that there is some active policing of the industry. And that's true to some extent, but certainly not to the extent that most people probably imagine.
So why don't we have, instead of the federal regulators, what about IFA being a watchdog? Or what about some other association or organization who knows about franchising? Say, hey, this is not a franchise to buy if you expect this, this, and this. And by the way, they're misrepresenting these issues in there. Why not? Maybe Reidel Law Firm could start doing that.
I'm actually working on something like that. I'm putting together a large database because the tools are available now to do that and share my insights. So first quarter next year, expect.
All right. I'm going to be watching for that. You know, much of my career, because I've been a speaker and an educator, and franchisors are my clients. I still do some consulting work. I was cautious about coming out and saying everything I knew about a franchisor, even when I knew, okay, this isn't exactly the case today, because, you know, I'm an old guy and moving towards a retirement eventually. I don't mind speaking out in cases.
Sure.
I don't think franchisors should be allowed to misrepresent information in the FDD, period.
Yeah.
And if nobody's going to stop them, at least people like us ought to talk about that and say, here's what we know to be facts. So be careful. We're helping you with your due diligence.
Word gets around, right? I work with a lot of franchise brokers, and when I know a franchisor doesn't do something the right way, or I've found misrepresentations, my network knows about it.
Yeah.
Your sales are going to.
And that I know a lot of people in the broker network. I have some who are members of my advisory board at the Titus Center, and they're very consistent with wanting to make sure that they're not selling the business in a box to someone or to an entrepreneur who thinks they're going to tinker with the program. Absolutely. Or if they're a franchisor, particularly if you have a high C personality, the competent personality, you expect high standards, and you expect that of your franchisor. So I see some of that going around. Now, you also say, we must acknowledge that the FDD, what the FDD really is, not the factual encyclopedia some claim, but a document requiring faith in systems that too often fail those who need protection most. We can't hit that enough.
It's a snapshot in time, right? It is not something that's promising you any results. It's not something that's designed to show you the future or prove to you that this works. It is a snapshot in time of the facts as they exist at the time that was written. And you have to make inferences, right? And you have to do further investigation about what's happening. Now, thankfully, they're updated every year. Sometimes they're only updated once a year, depending on the system and what's changing. But yeah, it's very, very important to recognize that snapshot in time. It may not be very current to when you're looking at it, depending on the time. And it's not making you promises. It is just giving you details for you to further investigate and further infer about your own opportunity.
Okay. Closing out on the FDD, we can't emphasize enough. You have to read it if you're a prospective franchisee. If you don't, shame on you and too bad for you. You're probably going to lose your money. And, I'm not going to say you deserved it, but you had your opportunity to read the FDD and find out what the issues were. You didn't do that. God helps those who help themselves. Reading the FDD is first and foremost. You don't want to do that. You want to do it to Rocky, have Rocky read it. Well, that's not enough. He's going to tell you that, no, you need to know this information as well. So, and on the other hand, there are things that people cannot find out. There's too much faith in the FDD or required faith. I don't like that. I'm on Keith's side. There is some new legislation that we need to look at building in to the FDD. moving on to eventually in this topic, private equity in franchising. So you wrote, the American dream of business ownership can quickly turn into a financial nightmare. The harsh reality is that our franchise system may be fundamentally broken. And it's time we acknowledge the uncomfortable truth and find solutions beyond popular rhetoric. Okay, we've discussed some of that already. I need to, I'll give you more here. One of the egregious issues that you see daily is the predatory sales process. And franchise salespeople prey on emotions. All salespeople prey on emotions to get you to buy a loaf of bread or a jar of peanut butter.
Or shampoo, right? Your parents don't look perfect.
But here it's a little more serious. The fantasy of being your own boss to inexperienced operators who have no business running a business. You've represented countless franchise exit clients who had poured their life savings into unproven concepts. The regulatory framework is largely toothless. We covered some of that. But here's where you say probably the biggest elephant in the room. Private equity ownership has consistently made everything worse. Wow. Because we all want private equity. Every franchisor wants come in and pay me $1 billion.
Yeah, it is a challenge. I'm not now you're picking some of my most inflammatory words, and
of course
I'm not right like that, right?
You're an attorney.
But it does get people's attention, right? So, and there are issues with private equity. I'm not to say that they're all the enemy, of course, but private equity has a model to load up debt a lot of times and leverage, sometimes over leverage. We've seen them kill franchise systems by over leveraging and then seeking to extract out of the existing franchisees in the system at large as much cash as they can to pay down that leverage. And it works great when everything's going up, right? If you have a hiccup, your system will collapse, right? It's a house of cards, and the first person to bump the table collapses it. So you just gotta be very, very careful. And I actually had a new post coming out I think Monday. There was an article, I forget if it was Business Insider or Forbes or something. I screenshotted it. They did the math. There are now more private equity firms than there are McDonald's. Like McDonald's units in the United States, which is crazy, right? So
30,000, or is that worldwide? McDonald's worldwide is 30,000.
I think it was just in the U.S. So in the U.S. it was I don't know, 15,000, and then according to their database, there's 19,000 private equity firms. That was probably a lot of duplicates, right? But it just shows that there is a push towards financialization. That's okay, right? That's not bad inherent of itself. But over financialization, the masking of risk through over leverage can be devastating to franchise systems and to franchisees who can't control anything, right? They don't control who buys the franchisor, how they're doing their leverage and debt. So it becomes a minefield, and sometimes franchisees are the unlucky ones who step on the mine, right? Because of no fault of their own. So I have mixed emotions about it. It can be done well, but I also see a lot of people pushing that risk tolerance and leveraging probably too much.
Well, once again, faith. You become a franchisee, you love the founder, you have 3 great years of developing trust, friendship, you're making money, and the founder decides, hey, it's time for me to take an exit. Big money from private equity, but you're sitting there as a franchisee wondering, is the founder's character going to be replaced? Is there going to be somebody I can talk to? You point out,
the values
I'm trying not to take the inflammatory things now. You point out, these firms, private equity, prioritize quick exits over sustainable growth, pressuring franchisors to sell units aggressively without regard for franchisee success. Some of that is going on, unfortunately.
Yeah, that is definitely a strong, and I would say probably the dominant private equity model. Is they come in with leverage and they want to push growth. A lot of private equity, they don't, and that's just built on their models. They don't look to hold for 25 years. They look to hold, 3 to 7, maybe 10 if you're lucky. Most private equities exit before 10 years. So most franchisees are on the hook longer than the private equity, right? So there's a misalignment of values, I think, and a misalignment of long-term priorities, I think. And it's not, again, that is not necessarily the bad thing. It can be done well. It can be done wrong, poorly. But you have to recognize that potential misalignment and take steps to adjust for it. And maybe that means planning an exit as a franchisee or shoring up your own finances or whatever, or having a plan B. It can mean a lot of things, but that's my point overall.
It can mean you better be a person of faith if you're going to get into franchising, because you don't know when your franchisor is going to sell to private equity and what that outcome is going to be about. So you have to have faith that it's going to work out in your favor. Most of the time, it seems to be helpful. In fact, I would say to franchisors, go take a look. The Dwyer Group, when Don Dwyer founded the Dwyer Group in 1980, and he was my client, the greatest one of my greatest clients ever, and a champion of franchising and a champion of people, champion of veterans and how to do it right. Unfortunately, he died way too early, but his kids picked up the mantle. Dina Dwyer Owens, his daughter, is just fantastic. And I was on the board when we sold the first time to Riverside, one of the first private equity transactions in franchising. Riverside did a magnificent job. And within 3 to 5 years, Riverside sold to another private equity company who held the company and did a good job as well. Held the company for, and when I say did a good job, helped franchisees grow. Yeah. And then they wanted to exit, and they guess who they sold to? Riverside bought it again. Now, by this time, I unfortunately was not on the board. I wish I had still been. But I think Dwyer was sold 4 times over the years, and today is known as Neighborly, the world's largest home services franchisor, magnificent company. So private equity, private equity is largely responsible for taking Don's dream and the hard work of his kids after he was gone and putting it all into practice and making it a fantastic opportunity in franchise.
I don't know the details, but I believe their family still maintained a significant amount of influence, if not control, even with the private equity. I think that's probably the missing factor in a lot of the other.
Well, that was a big part of it, but I don't know, because I wasn't on the board after that first round, and I had moved on to Homevestors by then. But the Dwyers are magnificent people all the way around. But they had a papa, a leader, the patriarch, who was just rough around the edges sometimes, or so people thought. I thought he was a mute. He's our kind of guy, Rocky, because he just tell you how it is. And if you don't like how it is, move on.
That's right.
No time for crybabies here. Don was just
where he stood and where it was going. I'll say that.
That is a case study that I need to get on at some point, how Dwyer moved with private equity. One of the problems today, because of the aggressive selling of units, is that, we won't sell you one. You got to buy 5. Well, we don't even know if this guy can operate 1, let alone 5. Or, you got to buy a 3-pack. And don't worry, you can keep your job. You only have to spend about 5 hours a week. Come on now.
Yeah. I see those as well. Unfortunately, those are areas that we make our prospective clients or prospective franchisees aware of, right? And help try to bring realistic expectations to the table. But when we do franchise exits, I will tell you the common denominator is they did not have help in reviewing their FDD, whether an attorney or a consultant. And they believed everything they were told by salespeople who may not even still be with the company, right? A couple of years later, these sales folks move on, right?
They move on.
Which is fine. Yeah.
Okay.
But they didn't have skin in the game, the sales folks, the franchisee. So, it's a challenge. And I see it quite often. That's definitely a common denominator is they don't have help reviewing, and they limited their own due diligence based on their faith, right? Faith in what somebody was telling them.
Yeah. And their desire, their emotion. I want to be my own boss. I want to get gone. I want to make $1 million. Well, we all do. We all like that. But okay, final word on this topic. Until you wrote, until we demand meaningful reform and accountability. which is what
Yep.
Keith Miller wants all the time as well. Franchising will continue destroying lives while enriching those at the top. Franchisees deserve better than empty promises and rigged contracts. So I applaud you for it. You're right on. People have to be careful. That's what it's about.
100%.
Yeah. And we need this help from government regulators. We need it, but we can't just rely on that because the government might shut down. So, all right. Moving on. Subway. Fred DeLuca. I wrote his book, Start Small, Finish Big. Traveled around the country, traveled around the world with him at times on trade missions. One of the most unusual characters in franchising. Started when he was like 18, 19 years old, right out of high school. Didn't know anything about franchising. Who does? When most people don't when they get started. But so I think I have a 2-part Subway. Then I'm probably going to run out of time, and I got a whole bunch. We're going to have to schedule another session.
Sure.
Well, you wrote, I've been watching Subway's remodel dispute closely. It's a case study every franchise investor needs to understand before signing an FDD. Not signing the FDD, but signing a franchise agreement.
Correct. Yeah, that was a typo. I'm sorry.
Subway is caught between survival and growth. They need modern stores, but their franchisees need proof of return before they drain retirement accounts. What makes this significant is that a motivated franchisee association is challenging the mandate for remodeling through arbitration. Well, this is the crazy thing about Subway. I knew from hanging out with Fred that you could become a millionaire as a Subway owner if you owned a country, or if you were a master franchisee, or if you owned all of Ohio or something. But operating one, no. And yet at my A to Z's of franchising seminars at expos around the country, people will line up afterwards to ask questions. Every time, not so much anymore now, but every time people would say, we know you know Fred DeLuca. Can you help us get a Subway? And my first thought was, why do you want one? You don't make that much money operating one. You've got to work in it 7 days a week. Why?
Yeah.
What was it about Subway that made it so crazily popular? Do you understand that?
I think the time and place and their marketing in the 90s was just spot on.
Yeah.
People wanted alternatives to burgers and wanted to feel like they were eating a little more healthy. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, right? But a sandwich feels more healthy. There's more green on it. They just hit the ball out of the park. And I think it resonated with a lot of folks and during that time frame when they really exploded and had those discounts that just hit people the right way. The hard part now is moving on beyond that, right? Now everyone knows them. It's the $5 footlong, but that $5 footlong is not profitable. So what do you do? Right? And that's a struggle between corporate and the franchisees is how do we get people in the door? And how do we, franchisors trying to get people in the door, franchisees as well. But on the other side of the coin is the franchisee wants to make sure their profits are maintained. So our system has a lot of significant challenges and struggles, and we're working through it. It's very interesting to watch. I'm rooting for everybody. I want both sides to win and be profitable and make a lot of money. But it'll be quite instructive for the industry at large to see how it plays out.
And your advice here is Subway needs to bring franchisees to the table with transparency, data, and partnership, not deadlines and demands. For prospective franchisees looking at any brand, this is your warning. Review remodel requirements in your FDD carefully, because you're probably going to have to do it when you're in that kind of a business. Due diligence isn't optional; it's survival. You point out. Okay, moving on to Subway number 2. Some other interesting things about Subway. One of the most dramatic market share collapses in recent history. It's unfolding before our eyes, you wrote. Subway, once the undisputed king of sandwiches with over 60% market dominance, has hemorrhaged 21% of its market share in just 5 years, now sitting at a mere 44%. What happened?
A lot of things. Well, partly they had a collapse in their sales and marketing, right? And from the late 90s, those discounts that were so resonated so well collapsed. Their spokesperson had a very, very bad falling out and legal issues, of course. They also oversaturated their market. In a lot of places, they put units in unsustainable locations and unsustainable market or unit economics, rather. That hurt them. And the other side of the coin, too, is that their success spawned their own competitors. Right? People saw how well it did and what resonated and how they could market and really reach people nationally and do well. And competitors came up right behind them doing those same tactics and same things. And you got to adapt. You got to be flexible. And maybe Subway didn't adapt fast enough. Maybe they, I don't know specifically, what happened or transpired, but it caught up to them and their competitors surpassed them.
So along comes Jersey Mike's and Firehouse Subs and others who figured out what Subway forgot. Sustainable unit economics matter more than sheer location count.
Yeah.
And I always got that feeling that the count, the number, is what was primary at Subway headquarters.
Yeah.
We're going to sell 5,000 this year. Or we're going to get 30,000 units this year. Everybody gets a bonus. That may be the wrong place to put the emphasis. And franchisees are suffering as a result of that. You also pointed out that Subway's new private equity ownership under Jonathan Fitzpatrick faces a brutal choice. Invest heavily in fundamental restructuring or risk becoming the next, Quiznos.
Yeah.
A cautionary tale that fell from 5,000 locations to extinction. Okay, so what do you think's going to happen here? What's Fitzpatrick going to be able to do? He's got some really difficult hurdles.
It is. It's a very hard choice. Supposedly, they're still working out in arbitration. I think the first couple test cases have been ruled upon. And now, from my understanding, the Franchisee Association is trying to sit back down with the franchisor and find a mutual path forward. I think both sides recognize that there's got to be some updates, there's got to be some refreshes, but it's got to be done in a manner that's probably not everything at once, right? Bam, we're doing a $150,000 remodel right now. Maybe it's in steps, maybe it's in phases, or maybe it's impact based, right? We do this and then gauge how the returns are and then move next. That's what I think is happening. I hope they work it out.
Yeah.
I don't have any specific knowledge, insider knowledge or anything. I'm just reading the reports and hearing the grapevine, right?
Well, a lot of those franchisees are just broke. They
a lot of them are struggling.
We've seen a lot of shuttered stores. And you point out the next 18 months will determine whether Subway can execute one of the most challenging turnarounds in franchise history or become another textbook example of how not to manage a franchise system.
Absolutely. It's a case study in real time.
Yeah. We hope it all goes well for everybody involved at Subway, one of the great brands. And the memory of Fred DeLuca made lots of people smile. He helped a lot of people become very, very wealthy, particularly in international markets and throughout the United States as well. But a lot of these brands fall on hard times for different reasons. And some of it is the economy. Some of it is that it falls out of favor. Maybe Jersey Mike just makes a better sandwich now, and so you move on.
And some of it was just things that they couldn't control. I mean, who knew that their spokesperson was, a terrible person, right?
Yeah, that was such a shame.
Right.
But, it's not only Subway. McDonald's is having a very difficult time. You've written about that as well. I don't think I included any McDonald's in our discussions today, but those franchisees are having a brutal time. It used to be, when I would teach, if I had 100 people in the classroom at a franchise expo, and I would say 20 years ago, 30 years ago, I would say, if you were going to buy a franchise today, how many of you, out of 100 people, how many of you know you will buy a food franchise? And about half, 50 hands would go up. I'll ask that question. I'll be going to Austin here soon to teach. I'll go to Fort Lauderdale soon to teach. If I have 100 people in the room and I ask that question, if 5 out of 100 hands go up,
it goes down.
They
Yeah,
want
food
to
and
buy.
beverages.
They want to buy service brands today. You got to work so hard in that food. God bless those people, because we enjoy a lot of franchised food, quick service, fast food as well. But it's getting very, very difficult to be.
And they've been unfairly maligned, I will say. California in particular has been a state that has been very aggressive and unfairly treating small business owners in the fast food and food and beverage industry. I mean, they have a minimum wage now. It's approaching $20. If it's not $20, it's approaching
I think it's 20. Yeah.
For frontline workers in a fast food restaurant, right? In a fast food establishment. And the thing is, in California, they have this idea that it's affecting McDonald's corporate. It's not. It's affecting your neighbors, right? It's affecting the people that own these small units. I'm very much against that, and that kind of behavior and regulations from the government, because it hurts my clients. It hurts the small Main Street operators that I deal with. It doesn't hurt franchise corporate, right? It doesn't hurt McDonald's corporate.
I see franchisors staying away from and staying out of California.
Yeah.
Within the last month, I was out there in Los Angeles to teach the Franchise Expo, smallest crowd I have had in years.
Yeah.
And a small number of franchisors exhibiting, because many of them who wanted to exhibit couldn't get their FDDs reviewed in time by the state of California. So California's no friend to franchising, or so. I mean, I don't have anything against California, but it's not franchise friendly. Whereas Florida is franchise friendly. Texas, franchise friendly. Those are probably your favorite states and mine. It ought to be every franchisor's favorite states. Usually they're pretty good.
It's usually the first two, definitely.
Yeah. All right, Rocky. Well, this was great. We could keep on going for almost another hour like we have this time, but I'm going to schedule that for a little bit more down the road. I love what you produce on LinkedIn. People need to search for you on LinkedIn, connect with you, see what you're thinking about and talking about. There's always going to be something there of interest.
I enjoy writing them, and I like hearing people's comments and sharing ideas. It's sometimes I'm a little inflammatory, but it leads to great conversations and great insights and ideas that we can get across to each other, and it leads to great friendships too. So please, join there and contribute to the conversation, ask questions. I really enjoy that.
Great.
Thanks for tuning in to the Franchise Hot Seat Podcast with Dr. John P. Hayes. Tune in next time for more conversation around all things franchising.